Hello, and welcome to Writer's Block. I'm your host, Adelina. Let's find your story. Being a teen writer is extremely difficult, and being a teen writer who wants to be published or wants to pitch an idea is even harder. And not to be discouraging, but I mean, and there are a lot of people that say, like teens shouldn't be authors and teens shouldn't this and that, which is total BS. Period. As a teen writer and hopefully soon to be author myself, I've seen a lot of authors, some of my like authors that are like some of my favorite authors say like, don't like if you're a teen, don't like keep writing to build up your experience, but don't try to get anything published. Which it's one of those things where if the story is good enough to be published, then it's good enough to be published. Like if you go the traditional way of publishing, then obviously, I mean, sometimes a publisher like they'll be real with you. They'll treat your work as if it was some like a Stephen King book, right? You get the same treatment as like I'm trying to think of authors right now. Suzanne Collins, whatever, like whoever else, Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I don't know. I'm trying to think of authors. Totally having a brain fart right now. But the thing of it is they will treat you like you're an author with like 20 years of experience, which is great, and it's great feedback for you to have, and it's great. It's just great to have in general, but the biggest thing is believing in yourself, asking your peers around you, not just like some of your best friends or your parents, because sometimes they're not completely honest and that's okay. But like asking like your English teacher or someone, to read it, be like, is this actually publishable material? If like obviously like if it's your like third draft, it's not gonna be publishable material. But like if I build this up more, if I do more with this, would this be publishable material? Would this be a good thing? Whatever. Just having those extra resources, especially as a teenager, like you're still in school and doing a bunch of other stuff. So you have some of those resources with English teachers, with creative writing teachers, you know, um, different, I mean, just even like your math teacher maybe like, hey, like, would you give some of this a read and tell me your honest opinion about it? Like people who maybe aren't in the English world as much, even, to give you some more of that advice. But there's so many things that us teenagers can do and that are honestly like just totally crapped on about, and I mean, I can I can get into how I feel about like how media portrays teens in a bit. But it's just one of those things where it's like there's so many teenagers that have so many different like works and different things that are just wonderful, like poetry to books to short films and screenplays that are just like soul bearing pieces that never see the light of day because there are constant like there's I don't want to say backlash necessarily, but for lack of a better term, like backlash from a bunch of authors that say like, no, like don't publish things in your teens. Don't, like, you don't have enough experience. You don't have enough life experience. You don't have enough writing experience, which I is sure life experience maybe, but if you're writing like a fictional story, like I feel like you don't need a bunch of life experience to write about a bunch of fairies like in their own like mystical world, like obviously when it comes to subplots like things like relationships and whatnot, sure, like you don't, as a teen you may not have a bunch of experience being in relationships, but I mean partially that's what research is for. And I know as a teenager myself, like this thinking, even like thinking about being in a romantic relationship and wanting and looking at other people and like even like just reading a bunch of romance stories or like just like hearing about other people's romantic endeavors, whatever. um so like you're still like, you know intertwined with that. Like, have you physically experienced it? Maybe not, but like you still, what you want to experience. So I feel like when it comes as like out in writing, I mean, it might not be as genuine in some cases, but also like if you like, like you're not in a relationship, but like I know like this is what I want my relationship to look like, and I know like this is what I'd kind of want as like my relationship kind of story, whatever. Like you could still write a really good romance, and you don't know until you try. There's a short film idea that I've had in my head for a while, and I've kind of started writing it out, but I haven't done anything with it because I mean it is like a romance thing and whatnot, and it is a really basic romantic concept, but just because it's about romance and I have not really experienced romantic relationships doesn't mean that I can't create something that is like slightly romantic or has romantic undertones. There's romantic relationships in my book, and from what I've heard from feedback from other people is that I've written them well. So it really just comes up to like the amount of effort you want to put into it or research or like even just like giving it a go, because you don't know until you try, and that's the biggest thing. And I mean that's what being a teenager is all about, is being able to explore all of these avenues freely with still having a support system under you, and being able to do as much as possible to become a functioning adult in the world. Um, so it's also just one of those things where I guess I'll segue into it now, just how media has portrayed teenagers, which is why I I'm right now in the middle of recording a video about reading John Green books, which is going to come out next week. But I really like how John Green writes teenagers, because he it's not like a lot of other people where they kind of portray them as annoying or like rambunctious and whatnot. It's like these, like, they're their own people, and they're having all of these experiences still with this kind of support system under them, and to where that they can become them, like them own their own sense, like have their own sense of self. There we go. Words. And just be ready for this world. Like, and I just finished Looking for Alaska, and it's a wonderful book. And so the main character gets sent away to boarding school, and there he is he does fall into some bad habits, I guess, like drinking, smoking, whatever. Like some people call them bad habits, some people don't call them bad habits, but he falls into kind of drinking and smoking and whatnot at boarding school because that's like kind of what he's around. But because he had this support system under him to send him to boarding school, he's able to have these experiences, and he had some of these experiences for reasons for to create his own path. You know, I don't want to spoil the book or anything for anyone who hasn't read it. But if you haven't, it is a wonderful book, and I totally recommend that you read it. But it's just one of those things where there's a lot of media that doesn't portray teens as like their own person and becoming their own person, you know, their own adult, and being in these weird relationships and navigating a bunch of weird things like romance. Like I'm reading An Abundance of Catherines right now, where the main character Colin dated 19 girls named Catherine, and he's navigating his relationships that he's had and why he's been dumped 19 times by all of these women named Catherine. So it's really funny, and I'm like halfway through it right now, and it's just wonderful, and I love it. But it's another one of those things where he's John Green is writing teenagers as having their own sense of self and transitioning into the stage of adulthood and becoming just like being and becoming real genuine people, you know. And I know a lot of people like Euphoria as a show. I hate it personally. I do not like it. So I'm gonna use it as an example because it's the thing that's coming to my mind. But the reason I don't like Euphoria for the most part is because, right, you have all of these, for one, you have all these adults playing teenagers, and then you have to kind of like it's hard to believe that 6'7" Nate Jacobs is like a sophomore or junior in high school. I'm pretty sure they're like sophomores or juniors in high school, which is odd. Like obviously, I mean, there's some tall kids in high school, because like but like I'm not gonna believe that like some of these women that are like, or like even the guys that are playing these high school, like they don't look like high schoolers. They don't. They do not look like high schoolers because they're not. They're full on adults in their 20s playing these high schoolers, which is totally fine. But it's just funny. It's just a funny point that like oh we have to believe that these are like juniors, seniors in high school. Like, they don't look like it. But it's it's also a good thing that they have adults playing these characters, obviously because the film industry has been so cruel to kids, um, and teenagers in general. Um, Not even like within writing, but just, you know, if you've read Jeanette McCurdy's or memoir, I'm pretty sure is the right term for it. I don't know. I'm blanking out on a lot of things today, but just, you know, like the cinematography of Euphoria is great. There's a lot of beautiful shots in it, but the one like the few things that I hate about it is how it's perpetuating that stereotype of all teens do is drugs, smoke, drink, sex, whatever, when that is not true. Obviously, like in Looking for Alaska, the main character is drinking and smoking, and he fell into some of these habits while he was off at boarding school because of the group of people that he was around. But not all teenagers do that stuff, you know? So it's just one of those things where it's really crappy to have teenagers portrayed in that way. And, you know, like further pushing this idea of teens are all like all teens are reckless, all teens smoke, drink, whatever. They do nasty things, whatever. And when that's just not true. And then this type of media is also then putting negative stereotypes on teens, then also affects the way that adults portray teenagers. And it is valid in its own sense, because that's what they're thinking. That's what the like certain media is showing some adults, but it's harmful because there are so many good kids out there, and it's also harmful to teenagers and thinking like, well, this is normal. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's just it just makes being a teenager a lot harder to be taken seriously. So here's my wrap around on the point here. But it's a lot harder to be taken seriously as a teenager, and especially as someone who is trying to make it in a super big industry like the writing industry, with like books, and or like the TV and movie industry with screenwriting. And it's just one of those things where like you have to keep going. And there's so many ways as a teen to where like you can just publish your works by yourself. You can self-publish. That's what I'm doing. I'm not gonna be like emailing a bunch of different publishers and whatnot and trying to get my story published traditionally. Because right now I'm like, I'm just gonna publish my book and people are gonna buy it, and I'm gonna make some money off of it, whatever, to put towards my next book. And if a publisher picks it up, that's great. And then I have a deal with a publisher, and then I'm in, you know? But it really just starts with what initiative you're willing to take. And there's so many options and opportunities for you as a writer or an author. Obviously, with the movie and TV industry, you can film your own stuff and put it out on YouTube. Like, one of my favorite series of all time, Video Game High School, is just a YouTube web series, and it is extremely successful. And a lot of the actors have acted in a bunch of like different stuff. Like Ace, in VGHS, is the guy from Shazam, and Jimmy Wong, who plays Ted Wong, is in the live action Mulan. Like, those are a couple to note. So like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't try, you'll never know. And one of those things with VGHS is that it was done under a company called Rocket Jump. So like, they had a bigger budget. They filmed at a college in California, as their set, and they had like a bunch of professional sets, and obviously they had a lot of great actors. Like the guy from Shazam was in it. But it's really just one of those things where you just gotta believe in yourself, because and you just gotta keep doing it. And the more and more we can as teenagers push out and put our art out there and be connected together, is huge. And honestly, the world would be a lot better of a place if teenagers put their art out there, and they did so many things. They put their stories out there, because the more we can learn from each other and our experiences, the better. So, like, if you've had an idea in your head and you haven't gone and started doing it, that honestly, this is your sign to, because it is so important for so many stories to be shared. No matter what age you are, no matter where you are in your life, just sharing your story and your art and everything it's so important. And it is one of the things that just keeps driving, it'll keep driving our world forward, and it'll keep making us progress as human beings, and it makes people think, and that is the biggest thing, is making people think about their actions, or like how they treat other people, and what they're just doing in their day-to-day life. Because you hear stories from teens, and the fact, like, it may make an adult question and be like, wow, like, I've been a fucking asshole, or like, like, oh, I didn't think about it that way, like, I'm like, let me learn, let me see things in a different light. So media and art and sharing our stories are one of the most powerful things to do, especially as a teenager. So I really, really encourage people to just do it. Just do it. Just do what you want to do. Do what feels what's best for you. Because as a teenager, you still have this support system under you, and it is the best time to just do whatever the fuck you want. So that's gonna be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more from me, subscribe, follow my Instagram. Everything's linked down below. If you want me to cover anything on the podcast, feel free to put it in the question form below, and I will address it on a further podcast here. And if you have any creative projects that you have put out, if any fellow teenagers have any creative projects that you've put out that you want to link down in the comments below, please do so. Let's share. Let's all share our work, and let's all support and uplift one another, because we really need a lot of that right now. So thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.